Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and we're going to continue on with our React build. So last we left off, we have we have our ability to log in and log out all set. That's pretty much all set up. Okay, so the next step would be to actually have our notes render on the dashboard. Okay, so that's going to be all going forward working out of dashboard.jsx. Okay, and let's do that. Let's just think about how we're going to set this up. We need to, one, be able to make the API call to get the notes, although we're going to want to do that several times. So we should probably do that as its own function. So first, let's just define that function that will go fetch the notes. And I'm going to need the URL from our global state, so I'm going to need to import our custom hook. So import use app state from /app state.jsx. Okay, I need to go grab, and I'm going to grab both the state const the state and dispatch, because I'm not sure if I think I need both. So state dispatch from use app state. Okay. Cool, because everything I need is going to be in there. Because technically, from the login set up added the token in there, and the URL has been there. So this is going to provide me the URL and the token right out of the gate. So I'm going to destructure those items out of there. So I'm going to structure the token and URL from the state. So notice I haven't really used props much. Okay. That's the beauty of having application level state. It's all just getting pulled from that context. Cool. So now that we've done that, let's make this function. Const get notes equals a function. We can make it an async function, because we don't need the return value. Again, async functions and .thens can only return promises. So, but I don't need the return value, so I don't care about that issue like I was having with the reducer, where the reducer needs to return the new state, but I had set up as an async function, so that made it return a promise, or I tried to do asynchronous operations in there, which means I couldn't actually have the function return what's inside those asynchronous operations. Yeah. So this is what we do. Okay, so get notes async. And what I want to do here is const response equals fetch, and again we're going to use the URL plus and this time it's going to be /notes. Okay, this is a get request, so that's fine. Not that then. Const notes equals fetch. No, not fetch. Response. The JSON. That's interesting that I did that. There we go. Await response.json. And then after that, we're going to use dispatch, and we're going to pass in. We have to pass in an action. The action type we'll say is get notes, and the payload will be the notes. Okay, and that's what this function does, which then will send. We need to create our logic in the app state here. So we're going to add to our reducer a case for app notes, and basically we're going to create a new state. The new state will equal the existing state Okay, plus no the payload action notes, which will equal the action.payload. And then we will return that new state, and that becomes the new state. And then we need to add a break statement. You always want to add a break statement, so let me clean this up a little bit. There we go. Save. Okay, let me just make sure that in dashboard, get notes, payload is notes, good. Okay, again, the idea is always this determines which thing in the switch happens, and then here we pass in anything that particular thing in the switch needs to do the thing. So dispatch essentially replacing sort of set state through our application. Okay. Cool. So that will pass the notes to there. Okay. We should actually, and then the thing is, if that's the case, then we need to add a initial value for notes to our initial state, which I will initiate as null. Okay. Dashboard. Okay, and so we're going to destructure notes from state, so that's going to be in there now. Cool. So that's going to, now we want to run this function at least once when this component gets mounted. So we're going to use a react.useEffect. Okay, and again, react.useEffect takes a arrow function and then takes an array. I only need this to happen once, so I'm not going to put anything in the array. And all this function is going to do, and actually I don't even really need the curly brackets in that case, is just do get notes. That's it. That's all this will do when we're loaded up. And cool. So what this is going to say is that if notes, so that means if notes is null, so which means it hasn't pulled from the API yet, it'll render one thing. So if it has been pulled from the API, has a value, it'll do one thing. Otherwise, it'll render an H1 that says loading. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loaded function that's going to render here what happens when the stuff is loaded. So I'm going to create that loaded function. Const loaded equals okay, loaded, and const loaded, we will render. Okay, and I use, and just as a side note, like I've used like application state in a very sloppy way. So notice, like typically what you would want to do is you want to keep certain components reusable, right? So what you do is you would load the application level state in the parent component and then have that parent component pass it down as props to the more reusable components. So that way the reusable components still expect props and they're still sort of encapsulated. I'm just pulling in the application level state wherever I feel like using it, which is fine. The only cost to that is that now none of these components really become reusable in other applications because they're all dependent on the way I structured the application level state in this application. I mean, I can reuse them in this application, but the encapsulation is less. So just think about that when you're thinking about like how you construct your different components. You know, is this component going to be inside of another app that's already receiving the application level state that could just pass it down as props instead? You know, when you think about those sort of mechanisms for transmitting data. Again, this I'm just kind of making up as we go along. So in that case, we didn't sit there and have like a big planning session of how the data is going to be passed around, but just put everything in the context. Okie dokie. So here we go, loaded. So what we want to do, if it's loaded, I want to, actually I don't even need these curly brackets because I just want to return some JSX. So I'm going to return some JSX. And this JSX is just going to have a h1. Well, we'll put some fragment, and then we'll put an h1. It says your notes. Okay, and actually we do have the username in the state, so we can grab that and just be like notes. We can just do username notes. So it says like your username. Make it feel a little bit more custom. Make it feel like it's your dashboard. Okay. And actually, I should probably make this a div. Let's do that. Make that a div with a class name of dashboard. That way we can style it later. Okay. H1. Then we're going to have the UL. Okay. UL. This is where we're going to list the notes. So then here we'll map over the list of notes. So notes dot map note, because passing in the singular. Okay. And then each note will be wrapped up in its own div, which will give a class name of note. So we can style those later. And we'll give it a key of note.id. Okay, and then each note we're going to have an H1 or H2 with the note title. And then we're going to have an H4 with the note body. Okay. And then those notes get rendered to the screen. Now above, we're going to want a button that lets you create a new note. So that's going to be wrapped up in a link. Link to, now we're on /dashboard. I want to stay there because I don't want to lose everything else on the screen. So so this link is going to take us to /dashboard /new. Okay. And this is a button, and that button is going to say create new note. New note. And then that's going to end up rendering a form right here. So I'm going to need to bring in route, because I only want the form to route when that URL is showing up. Import route from React. React router DOM. And I'm going to also need link to while I'm at it, so let me grab that. I'm not going to use switch because I'm not going to have multiple things. There's just going to be a couple of forms that will render in particular places depending on the URL. Okay, so they might be rendered at the same time depending on how you click things. Okay, but this will only be rendered when it's dashboard /new. But since you're on this page, which is already /dashboard, the rest of the page is still there. It's just going to add the form because I didn't put exact path on the route. Okay, so route path equals /dashboard /new. So it'll just make the form pop up under the button. That's sort of the effect I want. And component. Okay. Let me think about how I'm going to want to do this. Well, I have the application level state, so I don't need to do the whole render thing. So component will be a component called form. Okay. and we need to make that form component. So new file, form.jsx. Okay, I'm gonna just copy all this to save time. Form.jsx, this is gonna be form. I'm going to delete all the JSX. And this is just going to be a div with the class name of form. And inside of it, we'll have the form tag. We'll come back to that. This is going to be called the form component. I don't think I will need link. And since I did pass it as a component in the route, I should have the render prop, so that's fine. I do want to grab state and dispatch. That is fine. React. This is fine. Okie dokie. I'm just going to a couple things I want to add to my app state. So let's go back to app state. I want to add a blank form for a note. And then, so let's see here now. App state. I'm going to add a blank note. It's just basically the object with the properties of a blank note. So it would be title with an empty string, body with an empty string. This is going to be used to initialize our form. And then I'm going to have a property called selected. That's going to be the same thing. This that we'll use for when we do update later. Okay, so I'm going to have those properties in my initial state. So that way they're in my app level state. Okay. Cool. And now that I think about it, I'm gonna kind of do what I'm gonna do with this form. So let me go back to dashboard. I'm gonna do this in the same way that I did with the auth form and make this a param. So we'll call this action. So are you creating something new? Are you editing? Okay, because depending on what you're doing, it'll determine what we're gonna do. Okay. Cool. So when you click here, that is going to create that is going to push us to a page called with new as the param. Okay. Which then makes me think that maybe even better in my app state. Let's go back to app state. Let's click on it over here. Instead of calling this selected and blank, let's call this new and edit. So I can use dynamic keys to call them. Okay, and watch what will happen. So now I go back to the form. Okay. Now we're going to need to create state for the form. Const. And actually, let me pull out that action. So const action equals match or props dot match dot params dot action. So that we save the action there. I could have destructured it, but I chose not to. Const, let me destruction some stuff from state. So from state, I want. Actually, I don't need anything yet. Okay, come back to that if I need to. Cool. So that gives me the action. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new piece of state called form data, just kind of like we did with the auth form. Set form data. Okay, and that's going to equal react.useState, and then the initial value of it for this will be based on the state and based on the action. So if it's new, it'll grab the blank form data, and if we're editing, it'll grab the one that's filled with stuff. Okay, the beauty of using dynamic keys, okay, allows you to make simple conditionals. Okay. Cool. So that will set the form. Okay, we need to create the form. So form is going to have an input. Okay, and the input's going to be of type text. And it's going to be of, this is going to be for the title of the note. And the value will be bound to form data dot form data dot title. And then on change, we're going to have the handle change function, which we'll copy over from the other form. Handle change. Okay, and then we copy over another one of these, Control C. And this one's going to be for the body. Okay, and this is going to be bound to form data.body. Then we need to create one more input for the submit button. Type equals submit. And then the value with this says on the button, we'll use the action. So it'll say edit or new. Okay, and value action. Nice. Again, creating sort of multi-use forms makes the heart grow fonder. Okay. Now with that, again, the form tag is going to need to get the onSubmit event. So that's going to be handle change or handle submit, which we haven't made yet, but I'm going to copy those over from our auth component. So I'm going to go find our handle change and handle submit functions here, because that's always what we need for a form. Copy those over to form.jsx here. Okay, handle change doesn't need to change at all. Handle submit. Okay. I'm going to do something similar, so I'm actually going to borrow the actions object here. So I'm going to do the same thing here, where I'm going to make a function depending on what the action is. Okay. So we go back to the form. Kind of like this pattern, actually. So we're going to put that here. And we're going to define, so again, in this case, our two actions are new and edit. Okay, in this case, the function is going to be return fetch state URL, except now it's going to be going to notes. Okay, because in notes, we are passing a post request, con type application, the form data, good. I think that's fine. Yeah. Okay, now for edit, that's going to be a put request. And the URL, still notes, except we have to add the ID in there. So it's going to be notes / and then we have to add the ID, which we have, because it should be passed in the inside the edit object. So it should be just called state.edit.id, because it's in the state. We have a property called edit in the app state, and then that one's also going to have an ID. So I should probably add that ID tag initially as 0, just so that way we don't get any weird errors. Okay, because again, when you're editing something that was already created, so it's already going to have an ID in our database. Okay, so I go back to the form. That's the URL, which is just basically, again, whatever our URL is, plus /notes, plus state.editID, put headers, content type, application JSON, stringify the form data, got it. And then that's going to get brought over to here. And again, we're going to pass in the action, not type. Okay. Slightly different. That's going to call the right function, dot then. Okay, and then what we will do is we will set call dispatch. Okay. So let me think about this. If you're creating a new one, you're creating another one. Either way, you really don't need to change anything. Dispatch. Well, really all we need to do is do get notes again. But get notes isn't available here. So at this juncture, it might be easier instead of running get notes again to actually just like, well, I could pass get notes down as props, but I'd rather not. So I'm trying to think of what other way could I end up doing the same thing. I guess I'm going to need to pass it down as props to keep this from getting too complicated. I can think of how to do it otherwise, but I don't want to like blow people's brains up. So let's see here, dashboard. Let's go back to the dashboard. So we're gonna have to refactor this route so I can pass down props to this. Okay, so instead of using component, we're gonna have to use the render prop. So that way I can have router props and my custom props. So we're gonna put this here, create an arrow function that's gonna just render our form component. Okay, and then right after that, we'll put slash to close off this route. Okay, and we're gonna want to put get notes down there equals get notes. Okay, so that way that has it as props. Here are the router props, RP. Then I'll pass those as props, RP. Okay, and there I need to add the spread operator there. Okay, so in that case, what is going to happen is that whenever this router gets hit, it renders this function, which renders the form with the router props and get notes. So that's what we have to do. So in that case, I am going to go, I can just do props.getNotes. So let's go back to our handle submit function. And basically, once this is done, I don't really need to do anything particular with dispatch, other than I do want to read the form. Well, the form will get reset. And then what we're going to do is push you back history.push or props.history.push. I want to push you back to /dashboard. So that way the form disappears. And then we'll reinitialize next time you try to create something new. Cool. That should do it. Cool. Save. Anything I'm forgetting? So our forms are bound to the state. They have the handle change function, which updates the state. Then when you click the button, we have a handle submit with event.prevent default that prevents the refreshing. Okay. The actions object has the two functions depending on whether it's edit or new that are going to do the initial API call. And then in this case, it returns the final promise, which I then chain off here to run get notes. That, and then pushes them back to dashboard. That all makes a lot of sense. So let's go with it. Let's see if I can make a new note. So my app, okay. Right now, let me log in. Test 1. Test 1. Oh, what happened there? Let's take a look. Reloading. Oh, there it goes. Just took a while. Oh, because the API is... I didn't use the Heroku API for a while, so it takes a while for the Heroku API to wake up. So let's do this again. Oh, I'm logged in. Okay, and now it's not rendering the dashboard quite right. So let's see why. Okay, cannot update a component app state while rendering a different component app. To locate the bad set state call inside app, follow the stack trace described. App router. Dashboard type error object is not a function. This is on dashboard line 7. Line 7. Use state. Dashboard JSX, that's line 7. Oh, that's not dashboard. Line 7. Use app state. How is that not a function? Did I import it wrong? Let's take a look what I exported here. I exported const app state and use app state. So yeah, that is a function. Token.url state dispatch, use dispatch. What else does this? So let's take a look at the warnings. Oh, I know why. I have to put curly brackets around it. Because it's a named export. Okay. So let's go back to the main page. There we go. That's a bit better. Loading. And I don't see the new... Okay, because it's only going to do it if it successfully does the API call. Which means if I go to the network, I see here failed call. Message, please log in. Did we not send the token? Oh, that's right. I'm not sending the token. That's right. You got to include the token in the headers. That's right. Let's go back to the API calls. So first we need to go to... So we have to redo all these. Not redo, just add the header. First we need to go to dashboard. And in dashboard, we need to add... Where's the get notes function? I am going to have to add this secondary object with a method of get, and I do have to add headers. And the headers got to be authorization, and that's going to be, I'm going to use the word bearer space plus the token. Okay, and that's kind of how that should work. So I'm going to copy that individual header for a moment, because I'm going to also need to add that to form. So I have to add that here, which means I need to destructure the token from state. So const token from state. Okay, so that's there, and then also in here, because we need the token to show that we have authority to make those requests. And then I gotta do this again. Okay, now it's successfully pulled the notes. What do we get back as a response? An empty array, which is fine. So let me take a look at my state update. So let's see here. Let's go to app state. See what the state notes. Yeah, notes is still null. I think let's go take a look at get notes again. Dashboard. Dispatch.get notes payload. Get notes payload, and we go to app state. Oh, I wrote app notes. It's supposed to be get notes. Okay. Okay. Refresh. Let's see here. It's notes is still. So here's what I will do. Let's go with the dashboard. And maybe what I should do is take this part out. Let's just see if it's actually hitting the get notes. So type get notes. Sure, is that how I have it spelled in app state? Get notes. Notes action.payload, which should be an empty array. So let me see here, console.log payload. Save. Let's just make sure that I'm actually getting that array, empty array, into my reducer. Okay. Let's see, cannot update a component while rendering a different component app. To locate the bad statistical follow tag trace. Does not return anything besides a function. Did I fetch data inside a you wrote use effect. Let me take a look. The only place I have a use effect I think is on dashboard. Use effect get notes. Yeah, that's not async. Oh, because get notes returns a promise. I don't want to return anything. Okay, so it's just I see. Okay, so let me save that. Okay. Get rid of that error. Response.json is not a function. No, it is not. That's dashboard line 17. Response.json. That is a function. Response. Oh, I didn't use the word await. That would be causing all the problems. Okay. So there we go. Okay, cool. Test one's notes. So it's working now. Okay. Still not quite sure what this error is referring to, but we'll cross that bridge. So if I hit new note, okay, and that breaks it. Form is not defined. Oh, I never imported the form component. So into dashboard, import form from /components/ form.jsx. save. Refresh. Oh. There we go. Let's click here. And then the form appears. Good. And say my title, my body. And let's see if it creates a new one. Okay. So it does exist. That's a good sign. It did create it. For some reason, it's not rendering it. So let's take a look at our dashboard component. Dashboard component has app state. And in its app state, it has notes. And that's probably the issue. Did I destructure notes? I thought I did. Yeah, notes. And then when I map over it, it's notes.map. Assuming the component did not re-render by chance. So I go here, the notes. There it is. So let's see what happens if I log out and log back in. Test 1. Test 1. Okay, so that's just not rendering the notes. So the issue isn't that it doesn't have the data. It's just not rendering the data. Probably there's something wrong with the ternary operator. Loaded, const loaded. What did I do here? Div. Elements. That's something to fix. Okay. Let's go back over here for a second. So in that case, in the context of this UL, the notes doesn't seem to be grabbing the right notes. So what I'm going to do is to be explicit. I'm going to get rid of notes from destructuring because I notice I've used the word notes a few other times, so that's probably confusing it. So I'm going to just do state.notes. Okay. And then let's go back over here. Let's try this again. Cannot update. Error notes is not defined. Oh. Guess when I use it otherwise, let's take a look. Let me destructure that out of state. I'll just call this fetched notes and then call this fetched notes. So that way these are distinct from each other. Fetched notes. There we go. Okay. Oops. Still not rendering the notes. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into an actual function. I'm going to wrap this up in curlies. Actually, Control Z. I don't need to do that. I just need to do this. And then I need to add the word return. So that we're returning the JSX. But before that, I want to console log state. is state and scope there. Okay, so let's see here, dashboard 27. I open it up. There is a property called notes. In that notes, we have an array. It's an array, and in there is body. So why are we not rendering? So let's take a look in dashboard. State.notes.map. That should. Oh, I used curly brackets. So I need to get rid of the curly brackets and replace that with a parentheses because it's looking for the keyword return. That is why. So, because I was thinking it was an implicit return, but I accidentally used curly brackets, which means then you have to use the word return to return something. But if you don't have curly brackets, then it returns whatever's after the arrow. So that's where that went wrong. Okay, so, but now it doesn't like my semicolon here, so I'm thinking about why. I think that needs to be there. Good. Save. I don't think you need semicolons in JSX. Then let's go back and try this again. And there we go. That works. So now if I do my title, I do cheese gibberish. And there we go. So we start seeing notes. Okay, cool. So I can see display notes. I can edit notes. The only thing I need to do to edit notes is put a button, but we'll do that in the next video. So I'll see you guys there. Ciao.